The Fallout games are no stranger to strange and unconventional weapons, but they all have their own uses, whether it be Squirt Gun or Fat Man, they all have their own moment where they shine. Except the rolling pin. The rolling pin has no moment where it shines. The rolling pin is, well, it is what it is. It's a rolling pin, it's a melee weapon, and it barely does any damage. So today I aim to find out, can you beat Fallout 4 with a rolling pin? As soon as I loaded in, I hopped into the character creator and made the perfect person for this run. Who better to purge the Commonwealth of all evil with a kitchen utensil than the one and only Swedish chef? My specials are the exact same as my Ripper video, except a few tweaks. If you haven't seen that video already, it's focused on strength with a high agility and luck stat for the Blitz and Idiot Savant perks respectively. After finishing my character, I left the vault and headed straight for Sanctuary. You probably know exactly where I'm going with this, so I'll just cut to the chase. I scrapped everything in Sanctuary and was able to place fence posts till I was level 7. I took the aforementioned perks as well as Fortune Finder and Big Leagues. The reason I took Fortune Finder was because I needed as many caps as possible for healing supplies. Now, in order to start the run, I need a particular piece of kitchen equipment, and I know exactly where to find it. I ran south, avoiding Concord so I didn't get filled with lead, and stopped at the Drumlin Diner. The chef is not a man of words, so I punched Wolfgang and ran. After waiting for the people at the diner to clean up my mess like a true hero, I started trading with Trudy. The real beauty of this is that Trudy gave me 100 caps for protecting the diner, which was more than enough to afford a rolling pin. Of course, she didn't have one in her inventory this time. I had to reload and try again in order to get the dang thing. First on the menu was the Raiders at Concord, which would die in 1 to 2 hits. That's not to say I had an easy time here, far from it. I've fought these dudes so many times and not one of those times have they felt this strong. It only took about 4 shots to stop me and my weaponized block of wood, so you can imagine the group of raiders outside were more than a match for me. Thankfully, they're as dumb as rocks and don't seem to know how to find their way into the nearby buildings. A combination of this as well as VATS was enough to finally whittle them down, allowing me inside the museum. The raiders inside were a lot weaker than the ones outside due to the whole close quarters thing, so I was in and out before long. After talking with Preston, I considered using the power armor, but ultimately decided against it because I'm saving that, and a very specific joke for later. Outside, I made my way off the building to meet the raiders out there. I attacked the ones in front at first so that they couldn't tear me to pieces when I tried to hide in the nearby buildings. I then woke up a particularly grumpy lizard and watched the carnage unfold. For once, being on the harder difficulties paid off because not only were the raiders able to hurt the Deathclaw pretty badly, they also managed to break its legs. This allowed me to charge in when it was focused on the final raider and land the killing blow. After that, I talked with Preston and began making my way to Diamond City. Now, I'm not siding with the Minutemen this time. The only reason I'm mentioning this is because for some reason I ended up doing the Abernathy's quest to get the locket. The raiders in the satellite station were not much stronger than the ones harassing the Minutemen, so the quest was very straightforward. Ak and her minigun could have made mincemeat out of me, but thanks to a little beauty called the Blitz perk, she never got to fire a shot. Still not satisfied with the murder of the raiders at the station, I found myself in Lexington bullying the raiders there. I don't know why I found using the pin so fun. I think it had something to do with the fact I found lobbing a person's head off with it unbelievably funny. Anyways, I ended up killing everyone inside the assembly plant. It was here that I got one of my favorite kills in this entire run, when I somehow managed to kill 2 raiders with a single hit. Not even the rest of the raiders in the plant could seem to quench my thirst for blood, so the next group of people I saw ended up getting the business end of my rolling pin. The unlucky group ended up being the missionaries who, let's face it, never stood a chance. Finally finished imitating my kill everyone run, I found my way to Diamond City for supplies and XP. In case you're wondering, all my levels have been going to damage boosting perks as well as endurance. I figured I should start investing in endurance until I got the Cannibal perk so that I could finally get a stable source of healing. After talking with Ellie and claiming my XP, I decided to follow the story for once and rescue Nick. The strategy for dealing with the men in suits was to wait for a break in their fire and use the opening to kill one in VATS. Any other strategy would result in me doing a very good Swiss cheese impression. I ended up using this strategy to get me through the entire train station, so before long I was inside the vault. Similar to the raiders in the museum, the triggermen in the vault were forced to be near me, so they weren't actually able to take too many shots at me. Although Skinny and his friends could blow my innards out faster than I can say the sentence, this is Fallout melee combat, so it was lights out for the wannabe crime lord. After I exited the vault, I made a decision that quite literally changed the run. I decided the fight with the triggerman was too easy, and since I am my own worst enemy, I was only going to use an unmodded pin from now on. This meant I lost quite a bit of damage, as well as Fallout 4's very broken bleed effect. Unfazed by the sudden rule change, I wound up heading into Cambridge to help with the ghouls there. I thought a bit about what faction I would side with, and I decided the Brotherhood would be ideal. Here's my train of thought for this. The fight against the Marlord Queen would be brutal and nearly impossible without cheating, making the Minutemen a bad option. The Railroad is out of the picture because that would antagonize the Brotherhood, which I'm sure you don't need me to tell you why that would be bad. The Institute is also not an option for the same reason. This leaves me with the Brotherhood. You are probably all screaming at me about the Behemoth, but I'll get to that later. In the time it took me to say that little speech, I was finished with the ghouls and ready to help the Paladin and his group with their next task. Due to the fact Paladin dances with you, ArcJet is as simple as walking into an area and waiting for Dance to clean things up for you. Of course I thanked Dance later. I did cook him on purpose inside the room with the engine because I wanted to fight at least a few synths. They didn't fare much better than the raiders earlier, so all in all it was a simple mission. Now that Dance's little toaster problem was all taken care of, I decided that I needed a little bit more damage. The best way I know on how to get a little more smacking power was to get the Grognak costume in Hubris Comics. It only took about 2 hits to take down the normal ghouls, but there was no way I would be able to deal with the higher level ones as well as the glowing one. I instead opted to run in and grab the costume as fast as possible. Thankfully by now I've invested a point into the moving target perk, so running through was definitely the best course of action. After I grabbed the costume, I put it on to see how much of a damage boost it gave me, and it was only 10 damage. I guess it's better than nothing. I decided the best place to test my newfound strength was on the mutants in Trinity Tower. The mutants, despite being the strongest thing I've fought so far, were surprisingly weak against melee attacks. The base level ones could barely last a couple seconds of pressure from the chef. I still didn't try fighting fists, mind you. I had a plan for that. Remember in my Kill Everyone run how I mentioned that I used a stealth boy to sneak past the mutants? Yeah, that was a mistake on my part. It was actually in this run that I did that. Basically, I just snuck past all the mutants, freed Rex and Strong, and let all hell break loose. Eventually, the 3 of us were able to kill Fist and his gang, allowing us to proceed through the tower. When we finally made it off the tower, I made sure to take Strong with me. This wasn't really because I needed the help, although Strong makes a fairly decent damage sponge. No, it was because I wanted the perk you get when you max out affinity with him. I may have had a suitable sous chef, but I was missing one important detail that all chefs need. The hat. Now I could have just waited till someone in Diamond City decided to sell me one, but I'd rather just grab the one I know is there. That was just a long-winded way of saying I went to Salem and picked up the hat that's in the diner. Now that I was as prepared as possible, I made my way to Diamond City to catch me a Kellogg. There isn't much point in going over what happened in Kellogg's house and the journey to the fort, so I'll skip ahead a bit. When I finally got to Fort Hagen, I made sure to take the back entrance so I didn't get lit up by the turrets. Inside I obviously had the synths to contend with. The thing about synths is that they are not nearly as fun to fight as normal human opponents. I could take care of them pretty easily, but it wasn't nearly as satisfying as smacking the raiders around. The only real threat in the building was the turrets, which could kill me in seconds. Thankfully I had 2 legs that weren't broken, so I could just skedaddle out of the rooms they were in. When I finally reached the room with breakfast cereal, I immediately started beating him with the pin. My plan for the Kellogg fight was to disarm him as soon as possible, and then start fighting the synths. I had taken enough meds so I was able to dish out a reasonable amount of damage. Eventually I was able to separate Kellogg from the pack and begin slowly taking out chunks from his health bar. After a good minute, he finally flopped over, making me the victor. Now that Kellogg was disgraced, I decided I would start doing quests for the Brotherhood. There were only 2 quests I could actually complete, so I wasn't in the Pridwin for long. The first one was just meeting all the proctors, simple and easy. The second was clearing out Fort Strong. Still simple, not as easy. Now the obvious concern is the Behemoth. I'm not going to beat around the bush for this one. There was no way I was ever going to beat it with a single piece of tree. Not normally at any rate. Now I could have just used one of the buildings to glitch the Behemoth and swing to my heart's content, but I didn't feel like doing that. Instead I just used a Yaogoi roast to boost my damage. For the few of you who don't know what this means, allow me to explain. Basically, the roast is supposed to give you a minor boost in damage, but instead gives you a 300% damage buff on your melee weapons. Yeah, it just works. Anyways, even with the roast, the Behemoth still proved to be a tough fight. This was mainly due to his ridiculous damage output. Thankfully, on one of my attempts, I avoided being squashed into jelly, so that was nice. The mutants inside the fort are all stuck in cramped rooms, so crushing their skulls wasn't too difficult. By the time all the mutants were turned into what I like to imagine are meat pies without the crust, I was nearly out of time for my damage buff. I still had a little bit, so I figured I might as well get the most out of it and kill the railroad. Truth be told, the boost ran out before I even reached the church, so this was entirely for fun. Even with their secret passwords and other useless nonsense, the railroad couldn't stop one guy with a rolling pin. I effortlessly cut through them like a true chef. Of course, it did help that Strong picked up Glory's minigun, but still, it was a sight to behold. I know Strong's minigun stunt could be seen as cheating, but honestly, I was way too happy about the way he took initiative to kill the railroad to take it away from him. After me and Strong annihilated the railroad, I kind of lost all sense of direction. I started moving around the map doing random side quests, including the Cabot questline, Diamond City Blues, and Devil's Due. There really was no point in doing all of these, but I didn't seem to care. Eventually, my search for side quests pushed me to Good Neighbor, which made me remember there's more to this game than smacking things with a rolling pin. That being said, I'd much rather be smacking things with a rolling pin than being stuck inside the memory den, which is where I left off in the story. I thought by watching a few of Kellogg's memories I could make this section more fun, but I was wrong. Instead, I just sped through as fast as possible so I could go back to doing more important business. By more important business, I of course mean pretending to be a superhero, and you guessed it, smacking things with a rolling pin. The only reason I'm even mentioning the Silver Shroud is because it was when I was doing this quest that I maxed out Affinity with Strong. This gave me the Berserk perk, which gave me a 25% damage boost when my health is low. Sadly, this did mean I had to send my star student away. He learned so much in such little time. I'm not gonna lie, I was a little sad when going into the glowing sea without Strong, but I guess it can't be helped. Before I went to Fallout 3, I made the smart decision to take my power armor with me. Now I am truly an Iron Chef. Yes, I've been saving that joke since Conquered, please laugh. The power armor may have been a bit overkill, however, because nothing gave me any trouble on the way to the cave. I did pay the Children of Adam a visit, which was interesting. I started wiping them out like usual when I saw something that I found way too funny for it being what it was. When I went to finish off a cultist, I randomly picked him up and stabbed him with the rolling pin. Yes, it was as bizarre as it sounds. On top of that, this happened every time I killed one of them, so I ended up sort of strolling through the crater, stopping occasionally to stab someone. That was about the only thing that happened here, so I briefly made my way to Virgil, only to be told my princess was in another castle. Now, when you play this game multiple times, certain parts of it become more or less fun. For me, green tech is one of those parts that just gets better. Splattering the gunners across the building is always fun, but splattering the gunners across the building with a rolling pin is 10 times better. Even though they had good guns and decent armor, they could barely survive a single hit. To make things better, the fact that they were all grouped up let me get a couple of multi-kills. Even the gunner with the missile launcher didn't give me much grief. When it came to the Courser fight, I was in no position to lose. Some psycho buff I got from Diamond City Blues mixed with the mysterious serum I got from the Cabots let me push my damage pretty high. Not that I needed it, the poor Courser never stood a chance. He never has backup, letting me hard focus on him pinning him in a nearby corner. Even when I disarmed him, he couldn't really block my attacks, so I could continue to hack away. This of course ended with blunt force trauma to his head, causing me to win the fight. I then was free to pick up another brain chip to add to my collection. To make things even better, when I got to the Railroad HQ, they were already dead, so I don't have to listen to Tom pretend he matters, and instead could just press a button and decode the chip. From this point on, the run really started to pick up speed. To start, I had every ingredient for the relay except a biometric scanner, but those aren't very hard to get. When I did finish the teleporter, I had a couple of charisma-enhancing items in my pocket, which saved me a good amount of time in the future. One quick break in the laws of God knows what later, and I was inside the Institute, ready to rumble. I quickly mashed through all of Sean's dialogue before running straight to Advanced Systems to talk to Dr. Lee. Remember those charisma buffs I had in my pocket? Yeah, there was enough of them to push my charisma stat to level 13, which was more than enough to pass every single one of Dr. Lee's speech checks. This was nice because I hate having to hack my way through Virgil's lab. Now I could have left after talking Dr. Lee back into the Brotherhood, but I didn't feel like that was right. What did feel right was driving my rolling pin straight through all of the Institute's forces as I made a rather dramatic exit. Was this unnecessary? Yes. Was it fun? Definitely. Even though I already destroyed the Institute, the Brotherhood wanted to make doubly sure, so I still have to build the big murder robot in order to beat the game. The first part of the quest just had me talking to Dr. Lee, again. She said no, I said yes, she said no again, I said yes harder, and boom, she magically changed her mind. Also, while I was in the Pridwin, I somehow got stuck in the mole rat cage. Not really sure what happened, but okay. Now the main thing I had to do was go to Sentinel site in order to grab some slightly bigger mini nukes. This did mean I had to go back into the glowing sea. The trip to the site was a lot more dangerous than my previous excursions in the Great Green Wasteland, seeing as I was actually attacked while making my way to the site. It wasn't anything too tough, just a deathclaw, which was more time consuming than anything else. I play Minecraft casually, so I'm not exactly afraid of a little grind. I had power armor on when I actually went inside the warehouse, meaning I got to skip most of the enemies by just jumping. The ghouls inside were fast, but they should have used their speed to run away from me, not towards. It only took about 3 hits to take down the strongest ghouls, so I was able to make my way to the control room fairly easily. Now the Assaultron may have been intimidating, but that's about all it had going for it. I was able to quickly separate it from the Child of Adam that's with it and start forcibly removing its health bar. After that, I marked the nukes and started making my way to the Pridwin. Inside the war-flavored balloon, I was yelled at because someone was secretly a robot and now I had to go shut them down. Without his power armor, Dance can barely fight back, so in short, I very quickly made some Carpenter dance. I then ate him to truly become Paladin for the Brotherhood. My first task after promotion was to kick the corpses of the railroad. The quote-unquote reinforcements were nothing to gawk at, seeing as I could one-shot most of them. I think what really put the nail in their coffin was the fact I had rank 2 of the moving target perk, allowing me to almost completely negate any and all damage they threw my way. The ones inside the tunnels definitely got the raw end of the deal. By now I was able to do enough damage to kill them in a single shot, which made taking down the groups inside the tunnels an easy target for multi-kills. The quest only required me to blow open the door to their HQ, which was altogether completely pointless. Despite the fact I barely did any work, Elder Maxon congratulated me like I just won a Grammy. This praise didn't last long, however, as the next step for me is Mass Fusion. Although Mass Fusion can be pretty tough on your first playthrough, it starts to get really easy after you've done it a few times. As a matter of fact, I've found a route that lets me get in and out of the building in about 15 minutes. The only time I stopped to fight any since was when I grabbed the Strength Bobblehead, and a few managed to corner me. They weren't particularly strong, so I was able to fight my way down to the reactor. Grabbing the agitator would be a problem if there wasn't a hazmat suit sitting on the counter in the next room over. This let me just casually walk through the reactor, grab the agitator, and come back without breaking a sweat. The real trouble was of course the giant robot with a machine gun that was actively trying to kill me. Things did get pretty dicey with the sentry bot, but this is Fallout, so a mixture of drugs and more drugs got me through it. I already went into pretty great detail on how a fight with an Assaultron plays out, so just know the Assaultrons in this section were exactly like the one in Sentinel site, just with 2 of them. I didn't even bother fighting the last synths on my way out, so before long I was ready to make my way to the Institute with Liberty Prime. First I had to actually plug the agitator into Prime. Something funny happened here in that I got to watch Prime ragdoll one of the bodies of his scribes when I powered him up. There was no way I was going to actually follow him to the Institute, so instead I just fast traveled to the CIT. By now I have proven I can in fact kill synths, so you can imagine how the fight through the Institute went. Even the coursers had a limit to how many overhead swings they could take, so making it through the Institute was more of a battle of endurance than anything else. When I finally made it to the reactor room, I was somewhat surprised on how well I was doing. I still had plenty of chems if I needed them, not to mention the 100+ stimpaks I've been hoarding up until this point. These allowed me to tank even the unique synths in the reactor room, rocket launchers, and all. I did make sure to fight them and I came out on top. I think this, if nothing else, shows just how good melee weapons are in this game. After Thing 1 and Thing 2 were down, I strapped the bomb to the reactor and rode the relay out. Inside the control room, Robo-Sean wasn't too happy about me leaving him to die, but I'm sure he'll get over it in the remaining 30 seconds of his life. Those 30 seconds end about now as I push the big red button, proving yes, you can beat Fallout 4 with a rolling pin. If I were to describe this run in a single word, it would be inconvenient. It wasn't horribly difficult, and it wasn't a very unique run, it was just inconvenient. I could still do stuff like clean house at the Institute and do a couple of side quests, but I was just lacking on damage, and in the end of the day it just came down on whether or not I was willing to grind through the fights, or if I would just dodge my way through. Regardless, that is the end of this challenge video. If you did enjoy, please consider subscribing. Otherwise, I'll catch you in the next one.